all you need is discipline. Now, when you're working towards a goal and trying to make some progress, what often happens is you'll be making progress, you'll be working hard, putting in that effort, right? You'll be leveling up your discipline, laying up your willpower. You'll be doing harder and harder things and challenging yourself, and eventually get to the point you have a day, you wake up and you just don't want to do it. You have a day where that motivation is just gone for some reason. You have no desire to do your work. And then that day, because you have no willpower, you lose all of this motivation, this drive that you once had, and you start trying to be disciplined, trying to push yourself to do it, but you just are really, really struggling, and you end up doing some bad habits. You end up eating that junk food. You end up messing up your streak. You end up doing some things you don't want. You end up doing some bad habits, right? You end up scrolling for too long. You skip the gym. You don't do your work. You're just in a rut, right? But that's just one day. Now, the problem is, at least for me, something I've noticed myself, and chances are this happens for you a lot, is that when you have a day like this, because this happens to everybody, where you just have a day where you just really have zero desire to do your work, right? And what happens is you have this moment, and you let it get to you. You start, because you're not doing all these good habits, because you're doing more bad habits, you sort of let that get into your head, and you let these negative thoughts start to control you, and you start to have this negative, like, this unpositive belief in your head that you're not as disciplined as you used to, and that you fall in a rut, and you sort of convince yourself that you need to take more time off, and you need to just rest, and you need to just relax, and you can't do this anymore, and you're not as disciplined, and you're not good enough. And then you fall into a rut, and then for like a solid week, you're not as disciplined as you usually are. You've fallen off your self-improvement habits. You've fallen off your things. You're not meditating as much. You're not reading. You're not journaling. You're not exercising. You're not doing all these good habits that you used to, and you just don't feel the same. You're in a rut. But the reason this video is called All You Need is Discipline is, imagine what would have happened if you woke up and you don't feel the motivation, you don't feel that drive, but you somehow, you still force yourself, you still discipline yourself to keep doing the work that you set yourself out to do. You still do what you know you need to do. You still work towards your goals. That's the power of discipline, right? Because if you still work towards your goals, guess what? The next day, you're probably going to feel better, right? The next day, you're probably going to have some more motivation, some more drive. And if you really, really need some time off and you're really, really burnt out, then you can take a couple of days off. And when you come back, you're going to feel so much more energy, so much more drive, so much more desire to do your work. I used to record these videos every single day, but I've started doing it every other day, because that, at least for me, allows me to do other self-improvement habits in the morning, because I have, more stuff to do because it's a school year now. And it allows me to still feel energized, to still have this sort of like desire to make these videos, instead of just going through the slog, going through the motion of sitting down, recording, just forcing myself to do it every single morning. Now, if I have a day, right, where it's in my recording, in my upload schedule, that I know I have to upload a video, but I just can't bring myself to do it. I just have no desire, no motivation. I really, really don't want to do it. But if I still discipline myself, if I still manage to force myself to sit down, record, and make a video, even if it's a terrible video, right? I don't have to upload it, but even if it's a terrible video, I can still sit down and say, I did that today, right? That's the thing. When you have a rut, what makes a rut worse, what makes a rut last longer, is because you lose that desire, you lose that self-esteem, you lose that burning fire inside of you that allowed you to keep moving forward and keep pushing yourself forward in your journey to your goal, in your self-improvement journey. But when that sort of starts to die down a bit and you lose that motivation, what happens is you stop performing as well as you used to, right? And then it gets in your head, and then you can't take it anymore, and then it becomes a week-long rut where you can't bring yourself to do anything because you don't feel good enough about yourself, and all these horrible, you have negative thoughts, and it just sucks, right? But if I'm in a rut, right, and this is something I've started doing, this is something I highly recommend you do, is when you get into a rut, just get on down on the floor and do some push-ups or do some exercise or do something, right? Do something that requires, honestly, probably not that much discipline, at least for someone like me who enjoys working out, enjoys training. But do something that just requires a little bit of discipline, a little bit of willpower. And then you set yourself right back on the right track, right? You give that fire that was in you just a little bit of fuel, right? So if you know anything about, if you've ever managed a campfire, right, you'll know that when it starts to die down and the fire gets really small, you can't just throw us a bunch of big, huge logs on it, right? You gotta give it little bits of fuel to help it get roaring again. Then you can throw the big, huge logs on it, right? So when your fire starts to die down a bit, it starts to run out of fuel, you can't just start throwing on these huge tasks that you're not going to be able to actually do. And then your fire is just going to be smothered because you're putting on too much stuff. But if you give it just the right amount of discipline, just the right amount of willpower and work that your persona, your whatever, your soul, mind, whatever needs, you'll be able to get out of this, right? You'll be able to keep going. You'll be able to start putting the work in, right? You just need a little bit of discipline, just a little bit, and you'll be able to keep going. If you've made this far in the video, you are, there's not very many people like you, and I like to call you sort of like a rare breed. So if you've made it this far in the video, you can comment like rare breed or something like made it to whatever timestamp or whatever it is, just to like sort of, because I've realized that people who have a short attention span tend to watch these videos and start looking at maybe a couple comments, like suggested videos or whatever. And I feel like if someone was in the comments, like writing, like made it this far, like whatever, would probably boost my my retention a bit. So if you want to be a nice person and boost my retention, I highly appreciate that. But yeah, that's all I got for today. So, God bless you and stay wild.